Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for registering for this digital marketing session, and thanks for joining us. So we have Mr. Vedanarayan Vedantam, SME and Startup Business Head at Razorpay, as the speaker for the session today. A quick brief, about the speaker. Mr. Vedanarayan has helped build, grow, and multiple digital products and brand across health tech, ed tech, and online travel. He possesses a varied mix of global experiences spanning digital marketing, brand consulting, product management, and business development. He consults with early stage startups directly or through incubator on branding, digital marketing, and helps to evaluate product market fitment. He also happens to be a visiting faculty in the top B schools in the country. I am Bangalore, Indore, I am Kashipur, to name a few. So, welcome, Veda. Thanks for accepting our request. It's always a pleasure to have you in our sessions. Over to you, Veda.
Yeah, thanks, Shankar. Thanks for those kind words in the introduction. I hope, and a big good evening to all of the participants who've turned up today. I hope all of you are safe and sound. Your loved ones, your employees, your colleagues, everybody is safe and sound. We live in pretty crazy times, and it's been a crazy year, 2021, and I hope all of you are safe and sound. Let me just quickly share my screen. Is everyone able to see my screen? Able to see my screen, Shankar?
Yes, Veda.
Awesome. So over the next 45 minutes or so, this is what we're going to look at. We're going to look at some interesting inflection points that happened during the year 2020. We look at what has been the impact of the pandemic on the startup ecosystem. We'll also look at some best practices from an acquisition perspective. I used to lead marketing for a company called Healthify Me before. We look at a small case study, a sneak peek into some of the best practices that we did back at Healthify Me. Then we'll focus on customer engagement. So it's a presentation of two parts, so to speak. We look at customer acquisition to begin with, and we look at some best practices there, and we will try to understand what are some simple frameworks or rules of thumb that you can follow for your dhanda, which will help you understand or make a decision and a determination of which digital marketing channels you need to prioritize as your number one focus. And then we'll shift tracks and focus on customer engagement. From an engagement perspective, I'll give you some case studies again from Simply Learn, where I used to take care of marketing before. And then we'll talk about a couple of topics which are very close to my heart: the need for driving repeat business, and we'll talk about a failure case study and a success one. I believed it back then. I believe it even more so now, that we learn a lot more from our failures than we do from our successes. So we'll have a quick sneak peek there, and then towards the end we'll have a bonus feature, so to speak, where we look at at the most philosophical level possible, what are the various ways and means by which you can build brand exposure for your business, right? We look at all of the different ways in which you go about doing that. Some inflection points which kind of slipped below the radar. Not a lot of people took notice of this. The first one was this, right? In India, the term search and Google search is used almost synonymously. It is used interchangeably because of the absolute and total monopoly that Google has in the Indian market. But in the year 2020, for the first time, the Google search via the browser web was not the number one, numero uno, logical entry point for Indians looking to discover the World Wide Web. It was actually Google search via the Play Store, which became the number one entry point. And this has some pretty fundamental implications for all of you who are digital entrepreneurs, who are either already digital entrepreneurs and or are aspiring to become digital entrepreneurs tomorrow. It means that the mobile app needs to be front, middle, and center of your digital brand presence building strategy. It also means that if you're a digital marketer or if you're looking to do digital marketing for your digital business, mobile marketing needs to play a very pivotal role. Moving on, the second inflection point, that a lot of people did not take notice of was this. What you see here are the various phases in the brand's life cycle journey, right, that a brand actually goes through in the prospect's psyche, in the prospect's mind, where a brand actually moves from awareness, where awareness about a particular brand is seeded, right? Shankar gets to know that there is a brand called Razorpay, first of all, and then he begins to develop a certain level of consideration towards the brand. And then there is, of course, evaluation, where Shankar looks at Razorpay and a few other players as part of a shortlist of final products on which he is finally looking to evaluate. And then there is the final act of purchase, right, where Shankar whips out his credit card and pays for the product or service, or debit card, right, or UPI handle, right? He pays for his product or service. Now, despite the huge growth of digital in India over the last decade, it was this very popular symbol, right? The good old-fashioned television set, which was the number one awareness building vehicle, for brands in India. There was nothing which came close to the good old fashioned television set when it came to building awareness at scale. And that changed during the year 2020, when for the first time ever, television actually became more of a brand reinforcement channel. It moved a step further down in the life cycle, and it moved into the consideration phase. And these three very popular digital symbols, which need no introduction, right? YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook became the #1 awareness building vehicles. All of these again attest to the kind of growth, exponential growth, that the pandemic has brought about, and that has resulted in this exponential growth for the digital ecosystem in the country. And I often say that it's been like we've been sitting inside of a time machine, and you've woken up 5 years hence, right? 5 years into the future. That is the kind of change that we've seen in the last 1 year. If not for the pandemic, this growth that we've seen in the last 1 year in India's digital ecosystem would have possibly happened over a 5-year horizon, right? But all of that has been constrained into the last 9 to 12 months, and it's been like a roller coaster journey. Now let's just spend a couple of minutes in talking a little about the impact of the pandemic itself on India's startup ecosystem. And at Razorpay, we often think of ourselves as an index fund that sits on top of the entire startup and the SME community in the country. Because we process the entire cycle of money movement, right? Both the inward money movement cycle, where businesses are able to receive funds from their end customers through our payment gateway, payment link, payment page products, and the outward money movement journey, where businesses pay out funds to their vendor partners, raw material suppliers, employee, payroll, etc., through the Razorpay X business banking platform that we provide. And so this gives us at Razorpay a ringside perspective, a vantage position to have a ringside perspective of what's happening across India's startup and SME community. We've noticed a huge boom of e-commerce and more specifically D2C brands, which has been particularly interesting. And we, for example, partner with one of India's largest marketplaces, and we provide a suite of payment solutions for all of their sellers. And we've noticed that all of these sellers, despite being listed and doing good and solid dhanda on this online marketplace, which is one of India's largest, they still have aspirations to set up their own digital brand presence. They want to set up their own website. They want to have their own brand presence, and they want to take care of the entire customer life cycle. They want to go direct to consumer, D2C. That has seen a huge boom in India. The other space where we've seen huge booms has been edtech, health tech, and gaming, which again is intuitive because we have people stuck at home, stuck in their homes, and they want ways and means to upskill, reskill themselves, which explains the growth of edtech. They want to discover healthier and fitter versions of themselves, which explains the growth of health tech. And they want to, of course, need avenues for entertainment, which explains the growth of gaming. And the other interesting trend is that we're seeing a lot of digital entrepreneurs who are first-time digital entrepreneurs coming on board, right? Which again has been very interesting. Almost 3/4 of the new businesses coming on board on Razorpay are first-time digital entrepreneurs, which I think is extremely encouraging for the future of India's entrepreneurial heartbeat, so to speak. And the other interesting thing is that it's not just about Bangalore and Mumbai and Chennai and Hyderabad, but it's about tier 2, tier 3 in India. We're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of businesses come on board from tier 2, tier 3 and below, which again has been extremely interesting. A lot of these businesses are also pulling through more monies through the Razorpay ecosystem. So they are not just, it's not just an increase in terms of sheer volume of acquisition, but these businesses are also pulling through more monies, which points to the kind of strong product market fit that they have with their respective customers. And the other interesting thing is this, right? So earlier, as part of the digital life cycle journey of a business, they followed a certain life cycle pattern, right? A business would first look to set up a website, then look to set up maybe a Facebook page, an Instagram handle. Then they would think of payments as an afterthought. But now they are in a hurry. They want to start receiving payments, and they want to start receiving it really, really quickly. Which is why, for example, a Razorpay payment page, has seen, that's one of the reasons why this particular product has been such a big hit with all of the startups and SMEs, because this is like a 2-in-1. It helps them build a digital brand presence and is a great vehicle for collecting payments. It's a 2-in-1. And we've seen a huge growth of these no-code products, which you can start using without writing a line of code, right? Which essentially has democratized access to digital payments for everybody. It essentially has said sabke liye hai digital payments. Because earlier persona of digital entrepreneurs were like Sachin and Vinny Bansal, Harshil Mathur and Shashank Kumar, right? Who understood the importance of digital and understood the nitty-gritties of tech. New age digital entrepreneur understands importance of digital, but does not want to bother with understanding details of tech. They want that complexity abstracted away from them. Unko bas dhanda karni hai, right? They want to run their business. And a lot of these no-code products where there is no hassle of quote-unquote integration per se, like payment link, a payment page, a payment button, which you can start using in under 5 minutes, have been a big hit. So some very interesting signs as we look ahead and crystal ball gaze towards the next 6, 12, 18, and 24 months for the future of India's startup community. As I said, the pandemic has brought digital to the forefront like never before. And one of the biggest questions that I am often asked, I serve as a marketing mentor working with various TIE chapters, Texas Industries Entrepreneurs chapters, Atal Innovation Mission with the Government of India, etc. And one of the consistent points of feedback that I often hear from various startup founders is this: I understand all of this, right? I get what is SEO, I get what is SEM. Conceptually, I get all of this. But tell me, for my dhanda, what needs to be the number one priority? I'm not Amazon, I'm not Flipkart. I don't have infinite resources. I have finite people resources, finite financial resources, and I have a limited amount of time. So obviously I need to do everything because marketing is a culmination of all efforts you do across channels. But what needs to be my number one focus? How do I make that decision for my dhanda? That is one question that I'm often asked. And what I'm going to give you over the next few minutes is a simple framework using which you can make this decision for your business in your everyday life. Now, this is a question. These are the usual suspects, right? From a digital perspective, you can add LinkedIn in the mix as well. There is Facebook, there is SEM, there is SEO, and there is LinkedIn. I'm sure most of you here know all of these terms. But for those of you who are unaware, let me spend 30 seconds in giving you a quick crash course. SEM stands for search engine marketing. Let's take Shankar's example. Let's say Shankar is looking to plan a holiday in Araku Valley, for example. And Shankar searches for resorts in Araku Valley. Let's assume there is no pandemic, there is no COVID. He's looking to plan a holiday in Araku Valley. So he types resorts in Araku Valley. Now, every time somebody searches for something on Google, a real-time virtual auction happens. Very similar to an auction in real world. Let's say I'm looking to auction this OnePlus phone. You have various people bidding various prices for this particular phone, right? In a virtual world, what happens is you've got various advertisers who are queuing up for the right to serve their ad, in the first placement for that particular keyword pool. In this particular case, let's say booking.com has bid $500. Make My Trip has bid $200, let's say. And for the most part, whose ad comes up on top is determined for the most part by who has bid the highest. In this case, given that booking.com is outbid Make My Trip, booking.com's ad would come up first. So Shankar would see a bunch of listings which say ad listed against them, the top of which is booking.com. Now, if Shankar were to click on that ad, Google would charge booking.com, $500. This is called cost per click, CPC advertising. Now, all of the efforts that you as a marketer, as a business owner undertake to make sure that you have relevant search ads coming up for relevant keyword search queries is referred to as SEM, search engine marketing. You can run all of this for free using a platform called Google AdWords that Google provides. Now, if Shankar were to scroll a little further down on the same page, he would see a bunch of listings that do not have the ad tag listed against them, right? These are called organic listings. These are based purely on merit. They've got nothing to do with who has bid the highest. They've got nothing to do with who has the more marketing dollars to spend. It is purely based on Google's organic search ranking algorithms decision on which website, which landing page's content is the freshest, is the most relevant, has the best user experience, has the maximum number of backlinks from other authoritative domain sources. And there is no cost per click. There is no CPC cost attached to this. So if Shankar were to click on any of these organic listings, Shankar wouldn't get charged the brand wouldn't get charged any money by Google. So all of the efforts that you as a marketer undertake to make sure that your website, your landing page can bubble up higher and higher with relevant content in Google's organic search rankings is referred to as SEO, search engine optimization. I'm sure most of you know Facebook and LinkedIn, right? Now, Shankar's question to me, Shankar runs a business. Let's say he sells t-shirts online, or say he sells mental wellness classes online, or he runs a B2B edtech business that sells to schools, for example, right? Shankar tells me all of this is fine, Veda, right? I get all this. But tell me, for my dhanda, for my business, what should I focus on? Right? That's Shankar's question. Now, in an attempt to answer this question, what Shankar needs to do is to start off with another question. Shankar needs to ask himself, the space that I am operating in, is that mass or is that niche? Am I operating in a mass space or am I operating in a niche space? And how does he answer that? Right? There are a couple of ways in which he can answer this. The first one is Shankar can follow his entrepreneur's gut instinct, which is a very subjective way. Shankar knows as an entrepreneur that the space he's operating in is mass or niche, right? I sell t-shirts online, I'm probably mass. I do mental wellness classes online, I'm probably niche. I sell to schools primarily, so I'm probably niche. The other way for Shankar to, which is very subjective way, right? The other way for Shankar to validate this subjective hypothesis or to challenge the subjective hypothesis is using data. and use a more objective framework where Shankar opens up Google AdWords, opens up the keyword planner tool, and essentially searches for core keywords which are related to his category, and looks at the kind of keyword search volumes that are in existence for these core keywords. Yeah, so he enters those core keywords. Let's say he searches for t-shirts online, mental wellness classes online, and he gets a sense of how many people in his target geography, let's say, which is India in this case, are actually searching for these kinds of core keywords in his target market. Now, it's not a perfect science. It is a part art form, and it is not a binary, it is a grayscale. You can assume that for a target market which has the kind of internet population size, of India, if the monthly search volumes are less than 20,000 searches a month for the core keywords related to your category, you can assume that the category you operate in to be niche. If it's more than that, you can assume it to be mass. So what happens if it's mass? You prioritize Google, combination of SEM and SEO. Why is that? Because it's common sense. You need to be where your customers are. Now, not all of us can be Amazon and Flipkart. We may not be able to create new user behaviors or change user behavior patterns. But what we can very well do is we can get to piggyback and ride the wave of existing user behavior patterns which are already there on Google. There are already enough volumes of people searching for keywords related to your category on Google. So it makes sense for you to piggyback and ride that wave and make sure that your brand has an opportunity to be placed in front of those eyeballs who are actually searching for keywords related to your category at that particular moment of truth when they are actually searching for those keywords. So if you're mass, which means there is already existing user demand, existing user behavior on Google, you make Google your number one focus. Now, what happens if you're niche? You're not that lucky, right? Then what do? No, you don't directly run into Facebook's arms, but you ask an additional question, right? Am I high on personal connect, and can I inject a very strong visual element, empathy-driven, communication? That's the second question you ask yourself. Let me give you an example. When I first joined Healthify.me, I had a huge culture shock. Healthify.me happens to be India's largest health and fitness mobile application with over 25 million users, and it is a freemium app, right? Which means there's certain aspects which are free, certain aspects which are paid for. The free aspect involves world's largest Indian database, and for you to do calorie counting. So Shankar has had some exotic cuisine which is a local authentic cuisine of Mizoram or from Kashmir or from Kanyakumari or from Lakshadweep, Andaman, Nicobar. He'll be able to log all of that on the app, and the app will be able to recognize how many proteins, carbs he's consumed, how many calories he's consumed. Shankar has gone for a 5-kilometer jog today morning. He can log all of that, right? He's had Pesaratu for breakfast. He can log that, right? So essentially it's like a daily diary for calorie intake and calorie burn. Makes Shankar a lot more mindful of his eating habits and workout patterns. So that's the free service. Now, the premium service involves creating a personalized diet, fitness, yoga plans as per the health goals of Shankar, right? That's the premium plan. Now, when I first joined Healthify.me, in all of my previous experiences, it was always Google search, which was the number one dhanda driver, which was the number one breadwinner, ROI driving marketing channel. Facebook had always worked more as a brand channel in all of my previous experiences, but here it was different. Facebook was the number one dhanda driver because the space that Healthify.me was operating in was in the space of weight loss, about health and fitness. It was enabling a 40-something middle-aged man overcome a beer belly, excess body weight, hypertension, diabetes, which has come about due to a sedentary lifestyle, and discover a healthier and fitter version. It was enabling a 30-something young mother overcome post-pregnancy body fat and rediscover her healthier and fitter selves. It is enabling a 20-something young man get a six-pack cap and muzzle up before Valentine's Day so that he can look good, in front of his Valentine. So it's very close to the personal identity of an individual, and health and fitness, weight loss is as close as you can get to the personal identity of an individual. Plus, as a brand, all of the communication that we didn't do any talking ourselves. We had authentic retellings of the kind of life transformation stories that our customers had actually been through, which essentially it was all testimonial led, video led, high empathy communication. All of this does really well on Facebook, which is why if you're operating in a space such as this, which is proactive health tech, which is the space that a Healthify.me, a Cult Fit operates in, or fashion tech, which is again involved purchase, very strong personal connect, right? Like a Myntra or a Nykaa, the spaces that these guys operate in, Facebook would work really well. Having said that, if you are in the B2B space, and if you are selling to companies whose primary decision makers are very active on LinkedIn, let's say, for example, at Healthify.me, we used to sell corporate wellness programs to a lot of large business houses in India. Infosys, Cognizant, TCS, etc. And in a lot of these cases, we were selling to directors of HR and above. We were selling employee engagement plans. And what used to happen was, and a lot of these HR folks are very active on LinkedIn. So these were the primary people that we sold to, and these are very active on LinkedIn. We were either looking to sell to CHROs or directors of HR and above, or we were looking to sell to CXOs, even if they were outside of HR, because they have the ability to influence decisions, right? So LinkedIn was a big channel for us. Of course, LinkedIn will not work in all B2B cases. For example, if you're selling to schools, not a lot of school principals are on LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn may not always be the answer. In that case, you might probably, you're better off using channel partnerships if you're selling to schools primarily. But as long as your B2B and your primary decision maker is a white collar working professional who's active on LinkedIn, like in the corporate wellness example that I just gave, you can use LinkedIn really well. Now, the third case, right? What happens if you're not lucky and you have a double whammy, right? You are niche to begin with, and you are low on personal connect. We talked about a scenario by your mass. Second is your niche, but strong on personal connect. But here you don't have either. Neither do you have mass, you don't have scale, you don't have enough people searching for you on Google. So your niche, plus you are low on personal connect. What do you do? What do you do? That's just the nature of the category. For example, at Razorpay, we have a very similar problem, right? Razorpay, we are a B2B payments company. We're not a peer-to-peer payments company. We're not a Google Pay. We're not a Phone Pay, right? And we don't have too many people. We don't have thousands of people, right? Multiple thousands of people searching for keywords related to our category on Google. Well, obviously the category has grown in the last 12 to 24 months. It's not a hugely massy space. Yeah. So what do we do in this particular case? And it's a double whammy, right? It's not just that we don't have a very strong personal connect, unlike say health and fitness, right? Let's face it. The entrepreneur doesn't wake up in the morning and get excited about the fact they're going to start using a payment gateway product. Just give me 1 second, please, while I plug in the charger. So the entrepreneur is not going to wake up in the morning and get excited about the fact that they're going to start using a payment gateway product. That's just the nature of the category itself. And so what do we do? So I have a double whammy, as I said. A, I have low scale. B, I have low personal connect. What do I do? In this particular case at Razorpay, we make SEO a big focus. We focus on creating high quality content, which is focused on keywords that are not just relevant to our dhanda, which is on say B2B payments, payment gateway, payment link, etc. But you don't have enough people searching for those keywords. So my brand is not getting exposed to a large audience. What we also do, in addition to focusing on core dhanda relevant keywords, is to focus on those keywords which are slightly neighboring to our business, which is slightly tangential to our business, maybe not immediately relevant, but having much higher keyword demand patterns, demand volumes, but very relevant for our target customer, right? For example, who's my target customer at Razorpay? It is people like you, right? Entrepreneurs, small scale business owners, startup founders, right? And a lot of these people need education and help on how do they use digital marketing for growing their business. How do I, navigate the GST compliance maze? How do I, for example, read a P&L and a balance sheet? A lot of first-time entrepreneurs don't know how to read P&L and balance sheet. They have questions on financial literacy, digital literacy, and on compliance, right? So helping create content which educates entrepreneurs on all of these different topics. These have much higher keyword demand volumes than core payments related keywords, B2B payments keywords. What is the relevance of these keywords to Razorpay's business right now? Not a lot. But is it relevant for my end customer? Very much so. So it gives my brand the opportunity to gain access to a larger volume of eyeballs because the keyword search volumes here are much larger. And I essentially get them in as part of my marketing funnel, engage and nurture them over a period of time before converting them into paying customers. Yeah. Just a quick, a sneak peek into some of the things that we did at Healthify Me. Some of the best practices from an acquisition perspective that we did at Healthify Me. The first one, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, and Healthify Me was and continues to be a app first and an app only business. And Facebook was our number one dhanda driver for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. But over time, Google became a very close second, and I'll tell you how in just a minute. Almost 5 years ago, Google launched something called as UAC, Universal App Campaigns, which essentially became the de facto way for you to run app install campaigns, for you to drive app installs through the Google ecosystem. And when they first launched it, everybody hated this. Advertisers hated this because you essentially had to give up a lot of control to Google. You essentially had to say, in Google Baba, we trust. Because earlier advertisers were used to a lot of control when running ads on Google, but here you had to give up control and you had to give Google your iTunes listing, your Play Store listing, your creatives, your landing pages, and Google would decide which ad to serve to whom and to when. And when we first launched UAC campaigns as well, the results were pretty poor, but we persisted with it. And what we did a really good job of was instrumenting something called as a Google Pixel across various phases of the user's life cycle journey on the Healthify Me app. Let me just try to break that down, break that complicated sentence that I just said into some simpler jargon. Now, The Google Pixel is nothing but a piece of JavaScript code that you can implement on your website or your app, right? And you can make that fire so that it sends information back into the Google ecosystem after completion of specific events that have happened. Let's try to understand this with a simple example. I'm going to take Shankar's example again. Shankar, I hope you don't mind. Let's say Shankar comes in and installs the the Healthify app. He registers on the Healthify app. Now Shankar has just completed a quote unquote upstream event as part of his life cycle of engagement with the Healthify app. Yeah. Now I send information back into Google about Shankar, which is anonymized, aggregated, and does not contain any kind of PII, personally identifiable information about Shankar. His name, email ID, phone number, I don't share any of that. It's aggregated, anonymized information that I send back into Google. And Google really does have, and this is an abuse term, but in this case, it's actually real. They do have AI machine learning algorithms, which are powered using AI, which helps identify more clones of Shankar, right? Now, Shankar continues to engage on the app, and Shankar probably continues to consume content. He picks up a 7-day free trial, a free diet consultation, etc. These are midstream events. I send this information back to Google. Finally, Shankar ends up purchasing a 6-month yoga plan. I send this information back to Google. Now, what I tell Google is this: Google, listen, I love Shankar. Go find me 100 more clones of Shankar. Go find me 100 more clones of this guy who have the same digital kundali of Shankar, who have the same digital footprints that Shankar exhibits. Go find me more of these guys. Now, Google's machine learning algorithms ability and their accuracy to find more clones of the Shankar would be limited to begin with when they have a limited data set to play with. But what we did was we persisted with this over 2-3 quarters, and what we noticed was over 2-3 quarters, as we started feeding Google more and more data, and I started sending Google data of 1,000 Shankars, and I asked it to go find the next 100,000 Shankars, Google's accuracy started improving. So over 3 successive quarters, Google became, USC campaigns became a very close second to Facebook. And this is what I popularly refer to as inside out targeting. Right, the traditional form of customer targeting is outside in, wherein you as a marketer decide who is your ideal customer, and you have targeting matrices which are set, and you go after that particular source of truth. This new age form of targeting is more inside out, where you let user behavior and data on your own website and application decide who your ideal customer persona is, and you chase after them. And that's what we did here, and that worked really well. For example, in the Healthify case, we always thought that the millennial was our ideal customer persona, but it turns out it wasn't. It was actually people who are beyond the millennial age bracket who are our ideal persona, because the older you are, the less fit you are, and the more keen you are to actually make a purchase decision. That's something which came through. Some of the other elements, we did a really good job of ASO, App Store optimization. You can think of this as SEO, search engine optimization's cousin, but for the app ecosystem, which makes sure that for the relevant keyword search queries, you have your app listing actually popping up. And because we did a really good job of this, even during quarters when marketing dollars were hard to come by, our scale never dropped, because we had done such a really good job of App Store optimization. We did a lot of in-app marketing, and one of the key elements here for us to do in-app marketing well was the fact that we created something called as a lead score, which was basis a bunch of different demographic and behavioral attributes. So I know that Shankar is from Mumbai. He has a higher probability of conversion than somebody who's from a Surat. I know that Shankar uses an iPhone, so he probably will convert better than somebody who's using an Android phone. I know that somebody who has a lifestyle condition has a greater probability of condition, like a diabetes or a hypertension, has a greater probability of conversion than somebody who doesn't. So using data points such as these, I can create a blended lead score. Higher the lead score, the greater is their probability of conversion. Lead score is a numeric number on a score of 0 to 100, on a scale of 0 to 100. So what I would do is I would target the top 5, 10, 15 percentile of these lead score cohorts with specific in-app marketing interventions. Like, are you interested in a free 7-day free trial? Are you interested in a no strings attached 1-hour diet consultation with my top nutritionists? Things like these, which would handhold, engage, and nurture these audiences across their life cycle with the Healthify app. We did a really good job of email marketing. More on that when we get into the Simply Learn case study. And we also did, apologize, there's a helicopter passing by. Give me a minute. Yeah, and we did a really good job of AMP as well, something called as AMP, which is accelerated mobile pages. This is a simple infrastructural code tweak that you can make to your mobile website, which makes your mobile website load really quickly. And we did a really good job of this, which which essentially meant that our mobile SEO rankings really started zooming. So these were the key elements that went into our overall mobile marketing recipe at Healthify. Moving on, so far we've been focused on what are some of the best practices, for you to focus on from an acquisition perspective, from a customer acquisition perspective, from a lead engagement and nurture perspective. Let's try and understand what are some of the best practices for you to follow. First of all, lead engagement and nurturing. What is it all about? It's about making sure that you work with the leads who have already entered your marketing funnel and have some kind of an affinity around your business. What is your marketing funnel? This is your marketing funnel, right? You've got leads at the top. Sorry, you've got traffic at the top. You've got leads in the middle, and you've got paying customers at the bottom. And we call it a funnel because people keep dropping out. It gets narrow as you go further and further down because people keep dropping out at various points in the funnel. Now, and lead engagement and nurturing is about making sure that your funnel stays as fat as it can be. The narrower your funnel, it means you're doing a poor job of engagement and nurturing. If it is as fat as it can be, that means that you're converting better and better, and you're converting more and more of your traffic and your leads into paying customers. That's what engagement and nurturing is about. How do you monetize? How do you extract juice out of people who have already entered your funnel? A quick, sneak peek into some of the things that we did at Simply Learn, which I think is one of the best examples of lead engagement and nurture efforts in our country. What I will do is I'll again take you through a simplified example, which will bring home the message fairly clearly. I'm going to take Shankar's name again. Let's say Shankar is interested in in learning digital marketing at Simply Learn. And Simply Learn, by the way, for those of you who are unaware, one of the world's leading edtech companies, provides online training programs in various courses, right? Digital marketing, data science, iOS, Android programming, project management, etc. Now, let's say Shankar is interested in learning digital marketing, comes and signs up on Simply Learn. He gets an email, a communication across channels, email, SMS, WhatsApp, browser notification that says, congratulations, Shankar, on having taken your first steps in building a career in digital marketing. Welcome to the program, etc., etc. A few days after that, he gets a communication across channels again, which says, Shankar, here are some latest and greatest blogs on digital marketing that we have curated and specifically handpicked for you. Right. And then a few days after that, he gets testimonials of people just like himself who have seen career advancements after having taken this program. A few days after that, Shankar gets a webinar invitation just like this one, which he can come and attend, which is being conducted by an industry leader for Shankar to gain greater trust towards the brand. If you notice, in all of the communication so far, there has not been one sales pitch. No sales pitch. Buy now, Shankar. Here's 20% off. Nothing. Right? The brand has been looking at educating and adding value to Shankar. Now that they have warmed up and engaged and nurtured Shankar over the last several days, on day 18, the brand moves in for the slam dunk. They move in for the kill, where they offer Shankar a 20% discount code, which expires in 48 hours. Buy now. Right? So what you see here is a classic marketing drip strategy. It's called drip because very similar to water dripping out of a tap, one after another, these communications go out one after another. And you as a marketer, as a business owner, can set up all of these rules, automated rules, on the basis of which you can say that Shankar gets this communication on day 4, he gets this communication on day 7, etc. You can automate and set up all of these rules, and you can set up all of these templates. All of this can be done through something called as a marketing automation platform. Giving you here some, some of the popular examples of marketing automation. HubSpot is the world's leader. Acton, Marketo, of course. And of course, there is good old Salesforce, which is the world's leading CRM. It also has a marketing automation module. But unfortunately, most of these are prohibitively expensive when it comes to an early stage startup. So I would recommend one of these players, Active Campaigns and a bunch of Indian names, Freshworks, Zoho, and WebEngage, which are more value for money. So you can use them quite easily till you reach around 100,000 odd, list size, after which you can look at some of these other platforms that I mentioned earlier. Yeah. Now you can use engagement and nurturing in a couple of different ways. The first is what I just mentioned, right? In the Shankar example, the Simply Learn example that I gave, where Simply Learn is trying to convert Shankar into a paying customer as part of that transaction life cycle itself. Simply Learn can afford to do that because they know they're playing a test match. They have the luxury of time. Their sales life cycle, which is the average time it takes for a lead to become a paying customer, is on an average around 30 days. So they know that Shankar is not going to run away anywhere. Right? They're going to stay with them for 30 days on it because historical data shows that. So they have the luxury of time to engage and to nurture Shankar over the entire sales life cycle. Right? So that is one way in which you can use engagement and nurturing. In cases where your sales life cycles are long, where you're playing a test match, where you've got the luxury of time, you can play like a Rahul Dravid, you can build your innings. Right? But if you're playing a T20 game, right, where you don't have the luxury of time, where if you say your Domino's Pizza, where your sales life cycles are possibly 5 minutes, what do you do? Right, in that particular case, it's going to be a problem because let's say that Shankar is hungry, he's feeling lazy, he doesn't want to cook, so he orders pizza home. Now, Domino's Pizza doesn't have the luxury to engage and nurture Shankar because he's just going to wait for 5 minutes. That's the sales life cycle time window from the time he signs up as a lead to when he makes his purchase decision. So that transaction is gone. You can't really do much to influence that particular transaction. But what you can do is, Domino's knows that, let's say Shankar is a vegetarian who loves paneer toppings, right? So they keep sending Shankar information of vegetarian topping pizzas with paneer, at regular intervals of time after the transaction. So the next time Shankar is feeling lazy and he's feeling hungry and he wants to order pizza home, Domino's is top of mind for him, right? So you can, in cases where the sales life cycles are very small, like an online pizza delivery or online flight booking, for example, in such cases, you can use engagement and nurturing to drive stickiness, brand loyalty, and repeat behavior. The third use case is, of course, refunneling users. I spoke about the marketing funnel. How do you put people back into the funnel, refunnel people who have dropped out? For example, at Simply Run, we used to have this concept of dead leads who have not made their purchase decision despite being relevant audiences. We used to have a separate drip campaign targeted towards them. At Healthy Family, we had a conscious effort to go after these inactive users who were hibernating, who had the app installed on their phone, but who have not really acted on it. They haven't done anything to move forward against this particular audience set. So we used to have specific campaigns aimed at all of these different user segments. So one of the great ways for us to reactivate these hibernating cohorts at Healthy Family was to use live content. We used to have Instagram lives, which used to be streamed live on the Healthy Family app, where we have one of our top nutritionists talking about the advantages of vegan dieting, advantages of a keto diet, dangers of crash dieting, etc. And we used to use these as hooks for reactivating a lot of these different user cohorts. I understand that most of you here are CEOs, you're businessmen and women, and you understand dhande wali terms a lot better than marketing jargon. So if you are to, in very simple terms, understand why you need engagement and nurturing, there are two very strong reasons. The first one is your sales team is going to be a lot happier. Let's try and understand this again with a simple example. Let's say Shankar runs a company. He has 5 inside sales team members in his company. They make 20 calls a day. They work for 20 days a month, which means they get in touch with approximately 2,000 odd people in a given month. Right? But what happens if his sales team's pipeline is 10,000 strong, right? How does his sales team get to make a determination of which are the top 2,000 they need to call out of this list of 10,000? That's where the problem comes in. That's where the value addition and the power of technology, marketing automation comes in, wherein through marketing automation systems, you can send communications out to this entire 10,000. There is no human bandwidth constraint there. You can send communication out to this entire list of 10,000, and you can see the kind of engagement that they exhibit with your communication. How many of them open emails? How many of them click on my emails? How many of them register for my webinar? How many of them attend my webinar? How many of them visit my pricing page? I can look at various indicators such as these and then make a determination of who is the most likely to convert, using creating a lead score, very similar to what we did in the Healthify case. And now all Shankar's sales team now needs to do is to call the top 2,000, sort these 10,000 in descending order of lead score, and call the top 2,000 who are the most likely to make a purchase decision. Yeah. And in this way, there are two benefits. One is the sales team is being more productive. They're being more efficient. They're spending their time with prospects who have a greater probability of conversion, which means increased top line, which means your revenue start to go up. And the other benefit here is that the sales team is not wasting their time by spam calling the remaining 8,000. So the brand equity, Shankar's brand equity is also not being eroded because the team is not spam calling those who are not quite ready to make a purchase decision. The second advantage, and the second reason you want to use lead engagement and nurturing via marketing automation, is that by a factor of 10,000 and above, and I cannot stress this enough, by a factor of 10,000 and above, these platforms are significantly more cost effective and value for money than cost per click CPC or cost per 1,000 impressions CPM based platforms like Google and Facebook, which means that for the same marketing spend, you get to acquire more customers, which means that your CAC goes down, cost of customer acquisition, which means that your bottom line starts looking better. So for two strong reasons, you need to consider engagement and nurturing: A, increased top line, and B, increased bottom line. Now, this is a question I'm often asked on how long you need to send your engagement and nurture efforts. In the Simply Learn case, if you notice, we send it for approximately 18 to 20 days. One rule of thumb is you send around anywhere from 4 to 7 interventions, touch points, covered across 3 quarters of your sales life cycle, which is your conversion time frame, lead to order conversion time frame. In the Simply Learn case, I know that my lead to order conversion time frame or my sales life cycle is approximately 30 days, which is why I spread it across 18. If you're, say, Infosys, right, and your sales conversion life cycles are 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, then it might be better off sending monthly newsletters over, say, 7 months. Now, this is in the Simply Learn example. If I had sent Shankar 5 emails in 2 days, Shankar would have marked me as spam and unsubscribed. right? There was no reason for me to have done that. I know that Shankar takes 30 days to convert, so I need to space it out. Or if I had sent Shankar one email every month, that would have been other extreme. Shankar would have probably gone with competition, right? So you need to space it out to cover 3/4 of your sales life cycle. It's like a baton race, the relay race, where you've got the marketing team run with the baton for the first 3/4 of the race before they hand it off to the sales team to come in and close a sale and go in for the slam dunk. Yeah. Now we're going to focus on a topic which I personally enjoy, which is on the need for driving repeat business and why it's so essential. We'll talk about a failure story to begin with, of a company which was back then, almost a decade back, one of India's leading online marketplaces for selling Indian ethnic wear. This was before Flipkart and Amazon launched Indian ethnic wear online, their own Indian ethnic wear categories. And back then, this was and it still continues to be, by the way, a healthy business. Stable EBITDA, stable gross margins. This business essentially used to sell kurtis, lehengas, sherwanis online, primarily to the Indian diaspora living abroad. They would take the body measurements of the customer and they would make those customizations with their in-house tailors and they would ship it overseas. Primarily because if you're living in a Toronto, in a London, you don't have access to high quality Indian tailoring. Unlike India, where you have a good tailor in almost every street. Whereas if you're living abroad, you don't necessarily have access to good high quality Indian tailoring. So we used to ship it across. Now, this was a business, as I said, with high average selling prices. Ticket sizes were very high, $600, $700, $800. Good gross margins, EBITDAs, cash flows, unlike a lot of e-com unicorns in the country. But the problem was this: it had very low repeats. Customers would buy one lehenga for $600 and they would disappear for 3 years. They would buy it for an Eid or a Diwali or for a wedding and they would disappear for 3 years, which is the reason why when we were looking to raise funds for our next round of growth from a lot of VCs, they found the business to be inherently risky because they felt we were always dependent on new customers and new customer acquisition. There was no stickiness built into the platform. Customers were coming in through one door and leaving through the other, never to come back, which was a big problem as far as they were concerned, and rightly so. And we couldn't really turn this around. And fast forward several years, at Simply Learn, we were faced with a very similar conundrum, right? Where again, the average selling prices were fairly high, strong EBITDA, strong gross margins. Selling prices were around 15,000-20,000 rupees, which is pretty high in the Indian context. So if I've just convinced, Shankar to spend 15,000-20,000 bucks of his hard-earned money on a digital marketing program, it's going to be a pretty difficult conversation for me to convince Shankar to spend another 15,000-20,000 bucks of his hard-earned money on another course, right? So what we did was to change this narrative. We had very low repeats here, needless to state. So to change this, what we said was we pivoted the brand narrative. We said that I'm not just a training partner for Shankar. I'm not just here to train Shankar on a particular course. I'm here to help Shankar improve in his career. I'm here to help Shankar plan his career. And I've created this customized, personalized career learning path for Shankar. And I would tell Shankar, you're at base camp. You've just completed this one course. You're here at the base of this mountain. You want to get to this peak, which is your aspirational chief marketing officer role if you're on the marketing track, chief data scientist role if you're on the data science track. And for getting to that peak, you need to complete these 3 other courses to get there. So essentially, I was selling a bundled offering to Shankar, but we called it as a learning path and we pitched it as a learning path. And the value prop was that, Shankar, you get to all of these courses work in conjunction with one another. I need to pick all of these together. And that's when your learning path becomes complete. And we targeted a lot of existing users. And the final course that we offered was our master's program, which was being sold at 3x of the average selling price. That was being sold at 50,000 bucks. We targeted a lot of specific users who had already transacted at Simply Learn, and we had a lot of drip communication going out. And over 3 successive quarters, from virtually zero contribution to our month-on-month revenues, repeat customer revenue started contributing almost 15%. This was a case where we actually managed to successfully turn around the repeat story. Yeah. Moving ahead, various ways in which you as a brand can create exposure, for your business. There are 3, high-level ways in which you can create exposure. The first 2 ones are fairly well used in the Indian context. The third one is not, and we'll look at all 3. We'll try and understand this as a simple example again. Let's say Shankar runs a company, it has a Facebook page. Shankar's team makes a post. He has 100 followers, all of them end up seeing it. We know that organic reach is not 100%, and it starts going down as your organic follower base starts increasing. Mark Zuckerberg has gone on record stating this, right? So, which means that when Shankar has 100 followers, he makes a post. 80 of them might see it. When he has 10,000 followers, he makes a post. 4,000 of them might end up seeing it. That's Facebook's own way of pushing Shankar to spend money on the platform. In this particular case, for simplicity's sake, let's assume that all 100 of them end up seeing his particular post, right? This is called owned media exposure that he has created for the brand because this is with his own band of followers. Now, let's say that Shankar spends 10,000 bucks and gets incremental exposure to another 10,000 people who are not his own followers. He has got access to this only because he has paid for it. It's paid media exposure that he's got. Now, there is a third form of media creation, which is even more powerful for building brand credibility. Let's say Shankar does not spend any money. He makes that post, but the post was so awesome that out of the 100 people who ended up seeing it, 50 of them ended up resharing it. And each of them had 100 people each, right, as followers, which means that Shankar's brand has now got exposure to 50 multiplied by 100, 5,000 people who are not his own followers. It's not own media. It's not paid for it. It's not paid media, but it is something that he has earned through this power of content. And social media shares are a great way for you to drive earned media coverage. And other ways include, customer referrals, PR, editorial coverage. Let's say Shankar gets featured in an interview in the Economic Times. He gains access to Economic Times readership. It's not his own, not owned. He's not paid for it. It's not an advertisement or an advertorial. It's pure editorial coverage. That again is a great example of earned media. Another example of earned media creation is third-party discussion forums. Let's say there are conversation threads happening on Quora, on where Shankar or other entrepreneurs are asking, how do I decide which is the best payment gateway to choose for my website? Right now at Razorpay, I have the opportunity to inject myself into the conversation by adding value in a very seamless, subtle, non-salesy fashion, in a non-spammy way. I have the opportunity to inject myself into that conversation and gain access to all of the viewers on that particular thread. So it's not my own, it's not owned. I'm not running Quora ads. It's not paid media. So it is earned media again. Now, no discussion of earned media or on social media shares is complete without talking about this hugely abused term, which is on virality. And we've also done a lot of earned media creation efforts, Twitter hashtag trending efforts across all of these different brands. At Razorpay, we have done hashtag trending efforts on unlock growth, where we have tried to crowdsource from the Twitterati entrepreneurs like yourself on what are their mantras for unlocking growth in the post-pandemic world. At Health Family, we've had hashtag New Year fitness resolutions, where we try to crowdsource some people what are their health and fitness resolutions for the new year. And of course, if you're talking about virality, that conversation is not complete if you don't talk about what was one of the earliest and the best examples of something going viral in India, which was the famous Kolaveri D song, and of course Gangnam Style in the global context. While a lot of us would be aware of Kolaveri D, not a lot of us would be aware of some of the backroom workings that went into making Kolaveri D the viral phenomenon that it actually became. Take a look at this video, which gives you a sense.
How much money do you think is required to make a song world super hit? 10 million? 20 million? We spent zero. Close the mouth. I'll tell you how. First, we shot the making of the song and then added subtitles for all the non-Tamilians. Then the most important, we added the collar ringback tone code for making some pocket money. We then put up the video on our YouTube channel and then seeded it on social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. To get the audience watching and talking about our song, we created a hook, hashtag why this Kolaveri D, which is a commonly used phrase in my state, Tamil Nadu, when somebody irritates you. Next 3 days, full tweeting different irritating situations with the hashtag why this Kolaveri D, but we also added the link to our song with it. So people who could relate to that irritating situation clicked on the link, watched the song and forgot their irritation. They also understood the usage of the question why this Kolaveri D, and then they started tweeting about things which frustrated them with the hashtag and also added the link to our song. Basically, people love venting their frustration on social media, and we use this insight to get hashtag Kolaveri trending on Twitter over 3 full days. Even people like Amitabh Bachchan ji and Anand Mahindra ji tweeted. The YouTube views kept on increasing. People were viewing, sharing. More than 41 million views across 220 countries. People love to ape a trend. So we put up a candid video of our own people singing the song in chorus, following which hundreds of people put in their own versions. Some even organized flash mobs, not just in India, even Netherlands and New Zealand. Oh, and by the way, the total collar ringback tones downloaded was 2 million and still counting. This brought us so much revenue that we are still counting actually. Okay, the enormous online buzz pushed even TV and print media to talk about the song. Articles were written on blogs, tabloids, and even newspapers. It was featured in news channels and music channels. Every radio station in the country played Kolaveri. In simple words, earned media is estimated to be more than 67 million rupees only. Money spent, zero. Mission accomplished.
That's a pretty interesting video, but what I can state for a fact is that they actually did not spend zero. They actually spent some money on that campaign, but it was not on very overt, explicit forms of advertising, but they used it very intelligently on influencer marketing, which was very subtle, which was very covert, and in exceeding that content in specific communities, etc. And that is true for almost anything that goes viral, even for Gangnam Style, which was a global viral phenomenon, where you need to give it that initial paid marketing push for it to gain access to that critical mass of audiences. After which, of course, assuming the content is inherently viral, you can shut off the paid marketing and the crowd can take over. And through social media shares, earned media can take over. It's like a rocket looking to escape from Earth's gravitational pull. Needs to reach that minimum escape velocity, after which it can fly free. That's all I had for you. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks once again to Telangana Hub for this opportunity, and to Shankar. Love to take any questions that you might have.
Yeah, Veda. So thanks for the session. Though we have a few raise hand options, and then we will take on the questions on the chat in box.
Do you want me to take the questions in the Q&A? There is a question Manjunatha has on public text, right?
Sure,
question is on, he has a company and he uses Razorpay subscriptions, but most of his customers are from tier 2. His question is, are there any nuances for him to keep in mind? I think one of the things, Manjunatha, that I would recommend is you can use Razorpay's local vernacular checkout. That really helps. And a lot of merchants who are like yourself, right, who are selling to tier 2 and tier 3, they use local vernacular, which helps them speak their end customers' language. So you can customize your checkout and payment experience for your customers in all of the top 7 Indian languages: Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, all of the top 7 Indian languages, Kannada, everything is included. All of the top South Indian languages are included. So that is a great way, because it helps build greater trust with your end customers. I think that is one very good way for you to do it. And the second, Mr. Manjunatha, is basis the recent RBI guidelines, especially with regards to new card subscriptions. There is a 2-factor authentication which has come in, and Razorpay is one of the few companies which is now compliant with this new regulation that RBI has put out. And that also really helps remove a lot of doubts that end customers have, because earlier, if I am an end customer and or say Shankar is my customer and I have taken his card details, Shankar might not even remember that he has signed up, and every month his money might keep getting debited, and he will realize his money is gone only after he gets the notification. So based on the new guidelines, Shankar needs to get a reminder 24 hours prior. And he also needs to go through a 2-factor authentication check, where he needs to type his OTP for his particular card before the money is debited. So these are also steps that the regulator has taken, which again helps bridge this trust divide. So I hope this helps you, Mr. Manjunatha. Do use Razorpay vernacular, local vernacular checkout. A lot of businesses who use it have said they've seen up to a 15% improvement in their conversion rates. And of course, the other one is the recent RBI guidelines, which will also help. I hope that helps you. Wish you all the best.
Okay, so Ms. Bhanu Priya, you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for you informed many things. So I am into digital marketing, working for an FMCG company, but they are not doing any they have their FB pages, they have their LinkedIn pages, but they don't get a good number of followers in terms whatever the post they share, whatever they do through pay campaigns as well. Like every week they do promotional campaigns also, but still there's nothing happening. As you mentioned that there are 3 kind of spaces: mass, niche, and there's third one, mix of both. So yes, this company deals in mass, but still it's not figuring out like how to make it happen. So if in this case, how will you help me out?
So in this case, Bano, you've got to be very clear on what your primary objectives are. This is a large company, right? It's not a startup. It has a lot of resources. So I don't think you'll be able to drive dhanda for such a, or directly attributable dhanda through a lot of your social media efforts. So what you've got to be very clear on is the primary objective for your social media presence is not really to drive dhanda or to drive business, but the idea is to influence brand perception and to influence brand quality of consideration. through a lot of your social media marketing efforts. And this is not just from a prospective customer perspective, it is from multiple angles. Prospective employees might want to join. It's from very good from a talent, employer branding perspective, from a prospective partner perspective. So you might want to work with various channel partners, right, in your supply chain, right? So very good from a prospective partner branding perspective, prospective investor perspective. It works from a lot of these different angles. So you've got to keep that as your primary objective. In this particular case, given you're already mass, your social media efforts may not be able to drive dhanda. So you've got to be very clear with the management on what your primary objectives are and what the expectations can be from your social media efforts.
Okay. So at the end, they, as per social media, agenda or objective simply to get awareness and to fetch sales. So awareness and sales.
Sales may not necessarily work. So if you, I don't know about enough about your company. I don't know if you're B2B or B2C. Assuming
it's
B2C,
B2C. Yes,
B2C,
it's into detergents.
It's going to be very difficult for you to drive attributable ROI because if it's an FMCG company, I'm sure you have like 20 different marketing campaigns running in parallel. Right?
Yeah.
You've got your television campaign running and you've got so many things running in parallel. It's going to be very difficult for you to attribute Facebook, let's say Facebook as a channel, for example, but you can to a certain extent attribute leads, right, which come in with that particular UTM param, which have come in specifically from your campaign. You can still drive attribution to some of these efforts, but that cannot be the only metric that you look at. And what you should also measure, Bhanupriya, is don't just measure directly attributable conversion, but also look at assisted conversion. So the way marketing channel works is it's like a football team, right? You've got one guy who passes the ball to the other, who passes it to somebody else. Ronaldo might be the guy who ends up scoring the goal, but you've had like 3-4 people who pass the ball to Ronaldo who also played a part. In a very similar fashion, right? The eventual conversion might happen because people walk into a retail store and they buy the product. And they may not really click on your Facebook ad and fill in your lead form, but Facebook in some shape or form has played a part in assisting that conversion. You should figure out a way to calculate assisted conversion as well. So one way for you to do that, for example, especially because you are omni-channel, right? And because you also, the fulfillment happens in person. You're not a digital, you're not just, it's not an online course that you're purchasing, right? Yes. If you have your own website, for example, where you're selling these products, then it is easy, right? You can measure this and you also have a way for you to measure assisted conversion. Google Analytics allows you the way to do that. But if say the fulfillment happens in the store, how do you do that? You can give an exclusive coupon code that's only visible on Facebook, for example. You can see how many of those guys redeem that on the store.
Okay.
Right? That is another way. So I hope that helps you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you don't mind, Shankar, will you be sharing the recording? Like he was little fast, so I could not write few points.
Sure. We will share the recordings. You'll get an automated email from us with the link.
Sure. Thank you so much.
So Veda, we'll take one last question and then probably wrap up. So Ravin, please go ahead with your question.
Hello, thank you for a wonderful session. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, Ravin, go ahead.
Okay. We are, company name is Find Me Factory. I'm founder and CEO. We are connecting OEM, ODM who are manufacturing physical hardware products to the bottom process manufacturers like casting, forging, machining. So we are kind of a marketplace where we connect both of them. But we are into the niche in terms of we are not B2B open kind of a Trade India, India Mart kind of thing. Instead, we vet our manufacturing partners very deeply and then offer them as a good source of manufacturing to the OEM. So we are in this segment, particularly where our clientele is OEM, ODM, or the startup who are innovators building some hard tech. So in this segment, how we should build our funnel in terms of, if you can just give some idea would be good. We need two kind of partners here. One is the manufacturers and another is the OEM who are looking for our solutions. We are integrator. We take care of the full bill of material, all variety of components through different partners and then give it to them.
Interesting. So are you a managed marketplace or you just let the buyer and seller, the OEM, interact with the parts manufacturer? Is
so
your job being a facilitator or?
So our business model works on OEM side. We charge OEM on the fees plus royalty and retainer basis kind of a thing. We don't take anything from the suppliers. So our interaction is mainly with the OEM. On behalf of them, we do all of this activity. So we are kind of a replacement of their internal team, but with more effective way, because we do that for more OEM. So we have a good deeper insight about the manufacturing processes happening in deeper part of India.
Sure, sure. But so I think the way I think about it is that the OEM is your supply and your demand is all of the different manufacturers. And in any marketplace that you're looking to set up, at least, and you know your business better, but at least basis pure first principles like thinking and some of the existing wisdom in the ecosystem. What a lot of people say is that it's better to set up the supply side first. So you want to set up the list of OEMs first. I think that is something you should work on getting to begin with, and then you can work as demand will anyway come. You can set up the manufacturing base after you get these OEMs in place. And as far as OEMs are concerned, first things first, on how you can get them on board onto your marketplace. I'm not necessarily sure if digital is going to be your number one answer, because in a lot of these cases you are looking at, for example, supply heads, for example, right, or procurement heads, for example.
Yeah, supply chain heads or procurement heads.
Yeah. So if those are your primary, personae that you want to speak to, some of them are active on LinkedIn. So you can try LinkedIn for sourcing leads, and more importantly, for creating high quality content, which can position your brand as a thought leader and as a trusted player in the space. Because in B2B, more than anything else, what matters is trust. They need to know that you know this space well and you are a trusted player. So I think LinkedIn can work really well in influencing this perception. You're lucky that I think for the most part, a lot of these procurement heads and supply chain heads should be on LinkedIn. So you can use LinkedIn for both brand perception building and for lead generation. But what you should also look for is beyond digital, you should look at event-led, high-touch acquisition methods. And the other thing is channel partnerships. If you can partner with other people who are already working with these OEMs, because a lot of these are relationship-based sales. And instead of you directly approaching this OEM, if you can partner with another player who already has the relationship, and you can bundle your offerings along with them, that's a good way for you to get a foot in the door and be a good conversation opener. And that will be my suggestion. Wish you all the best.
Super. No, thank you. One more question in the same line. As you mentioned, that app is the first entry point where people look. So we also think that app and the platform are the two main part where we will build the technology so that the entire complex product development can happen easily and trust easily across the supply chain. So we thought that we execute a couple of projects, do that MVP first, and then after gradually build the app and platform. So what is, in your experience, what we should be doing? Is it we should start something building on that side and then approaching, or
in your case, I'm not sure if you need an app, to be honest. An app works particularly well if you are operating in a space where you've got high frequency of usage, and there is a need for people to consistently keep, in the Healthify Me example, right? For example, people open the app like 4 or 5 times a day to log their water intake, log their food intake, log their workout.
What we are thinking in a way that there will be hundreds of suppliers and thousands of projects running on ground. Update them what is their current status of the execution.
If there is stickiness built in, I don't know enough about your business, but in your business, if there is enough stickiness built in,
understand.
And I, as a procurement manager, I need to open your app at least like say 3-4 times a month. Then it makes sense for me to get a sense of either for scouting for new suppliers or for knowing the status of my previous order. Then it makes sense, right? You should totally invest in your app. And likewise for the supplier side as well. I'm assuming you have two sides of the Apple. You have an app for both personae, right? You'll have one for the OEM and one for the supplier, and for both sides, it works on both counts. If the answer to that is yes, then it makes sense for you to invest time in building out an app.
Okay, and in that the version is eventually developed, right? So first we need to build something and then gradually it get upgraded to the...
Yeah, obviously you release an MVP first, your minimum viable product, which checks off most of your consumers' basic need states, and then you build on nitrate on top of that.
Okay, understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are already 4 minutes, more than the scheduled time. And thank you so much, Veda. It was such a magnificent, session, from niche marketing to in-app marketing, slam dunk, marketing dripping. Many things have been talked about, and I know 1 hour is not, sufficient to cover all of this. But thank you so much, Veda, for your time, and of course, thank you for making my name the most talked name in last 1 hour. So thanks, Veda, and thanks for Startup for helping us with this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me over, Shankar, THub, and Google for Startups. And thank you so much for all of the participants for turning up today. Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.
It's a pleasure, Veda. Thank you so much. And to all the participants for joining us. And please do share your feedback. The link has already been shared in the chat screen. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend ahead.
you.